Folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Today we want to talk about food, but not food in the stores, although I might mention something here or there. We want to talk about food that's on your property, and not necessarily the kind of food you're used to. We're not talking about gardening today. We're talking about wild foods. I personally believe this is a very important part of preparedness and homesteading. Yes, you probably hear one of the sheep because I'm standing next to their pen that they're in right now. Preppers focus a lot on food storage, and we mention that all the time on here because it is really important. They talk a little bit about gardening, and that's really good, and that seems to be getting a more popular thing to talk about and to do in the preparedness community. Definitely has always been in the homesteading community. But finding wild edibles and learning what grows wild on your property that is edible and medicinal, that's still something that, not enough people are doing. And I'm here to tell you, it is a very critical, integral part of your self-sufficient lifestyle. And so I'm standing here in front of two trees that grow on this property. When we purchased this property about 2.5 years ago, one of the very first things that I did is I walked all over the property and I tried to figure out what I could find that stood out, at least, that was edible and medicinal. This here is a plum tree, and these aren't the plums that you get in the store that are big. These are small plums. It's a native plum variety here in the Ozarks. And a lot of people just do nothing with them, but they produce a lot of plums. Now, they're small. They don't have a lot of fruit on them, but they do work, and they are edible, and you can make a pretty nice jelly out of them. And we have several of these that are quite mature. And this one, as you can see, it's just starting to open up the blooms. And it has a really nice kind of honeysuckle smell to it. Now, if you have a tree that looks like this and it stinks, then it's one of those ornamental pears, and I suggest get rid of it because they're very invasive. But this is a native tree. The blooms are similar looking to an apple, a little bit smaller, and they don't have the pink to them. But these trees produce a lot of plums. Last year, unfortunately, we had a very hard freeze and about 2.5, 3 inches of snow. I believe it was on May 5th or 6th. It was a little unusual. And unfortunately, it took out pretty much all of them. They were all in full bloom at that point, and it just killed all the blooms. And I think of all the trees we had, you couldn't have filled your handful with the plums that was left. But hopefully, keeping our fingers crossed, we will have a good plum harvest this year. Let me scoot this back. This one behind me is a tree that probably a lot of you are familiar with. If not, you should be. This is very common here in the Ozarks, and this is a redbud tree. Obviously, with the very pretty kind of pinkish purple red buds, and some of them are just starting to open up. And this is the little buds that grow. These are very edible. In fact, there's lots of stories of back in the real old days where kids had to walk to school that they would like to walk by these and pick these buds and keep them in their pockets for little snacks. The red bud, you can make tea with it, you can make syrup with it, you can make jelly with it. It's just a very nice, mildly sweet flavor to it. I love it. The kids love it. This is something that they love to come out here. You can also take them when they're these little buds like this before they've opened up. And as you can see, there's a lot of them. We have more of these trees on the property than I can count. You can pickle those little buds, and they kind of taste like little capers because they have a similar consistency. This, of course, is not the only thing. We have nut trees. We have a lot of different edible greens that grow on the property, mushrooms on the property. And I'm not saying all this to brag. This is pretty common especially here in the Ozarks, but just about anywhere when you buy a piece of property, there's a pretty good chance that there are things that are growing on that property that are edible. and that are medicinal. And I encourage you to get out there and look and explore and find out. Now, of course, yes, you want to make sure you're identifying things correctly. There's some really good plant identification books. The one that I use, it's with me at all times. I've actually got a couple of copies of it, is the Peterson's Field Guide to Medicinal and Herbal Plants, and then there's a Peterson's Field Guide to Edibles. Those are some really good books to use. There's others out there, but that's my favorite. People, we've got to get serious about our food. I don't know if you saw today, but As Your Standard, which many of you know who that is, it's a big wholesale bulk organic food supplier. Their main headquarters caught fire and burned overnight, burned to the ground, complete loss. They're hoping to get that back up and going as soon as possible, but most certainly that's going to slow things down. And you know, it's kind of a funny coincidence that really over the last year, there have been numerous fires and explosions at food processing plants and food warehouses all over the country. This is just, it's strange, you know, Walmart and in California and Maine and Oregon and just all over. This added to the already big problem that we all know, the inflation and the shortages and the supply chain and everything. It's just more nails in the coffin. So when you're getting out, and for many of you, it's already become time to plant. For us, we're not quite there yet. The ground is still a little too cold to plant most things other than the early spring stuff. And the ground here is still really wet from rains, and it's supposed to start raining again tonight. So we're hoping in another week or so, we can finally get things in the ground. It'll warm up enough, but even today it's a little chilly out. Pretty cool, and the ground's still quite cold. But for those of you that have already started or at that point where you can plant, certainly I want to encourage you to get out and do so. Hopefully, as we start planting here, I'll be able to do some more videos kind of showing that side of the homesteading channel. But I'm telling you, if there was ever a year for you to get out there and grow food, harvest food, forage for food, this is going to be the year to do it. Are you going to be in a place this year that you're going to be starving to death? Probably not. I mean, I guess that's within the realm of possibility, but I doubt that that's going to happen this year. But I do believe that this year is going to be the first year for most Americans that it actually hurts their pocketbook to purchase food by the end of this year. And they're trying to make decisions on what foods to buy because they're so expensive, or what foods to buy because what they're used to buying isn't available anymore. So I believe that towards the end of this year, there's going to be some, I mean, people are already feeling it, but by the end of this year, there's definitely going to be some major changes when it comes to food here in the United States. So even though this may not be the year that you could potentially starve to death, depending on the food supply system, it's definitely a year that I think it's going to be a wake-up call for a lot of people. So don't wait until it gets to that point that you could actually starve to death. I mean, that's foolishness. It's foolishness to wait to get so bad that, you know, there's just not enough food to really keep yourself afloat. Get out there now and plant. Get out there now and learn the skill. It's not like it is in a movie or TV show. You don't just go out there and dig a hole and put a seed in and expect that you're going to get all the food that you need. It takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of trial and error. I've been doing this my whole life. My family, my mother, they were big gardeners, still are. And there are years that I can plant and it does great and I have a great harvest, and there's other years it's just not that great. And that's just how things work. So you need to get out there and hone those skills. And even if it's just some buckets or containers on your back porch, you need to be doing what you can to get stuff in the ground so that you can practice the skill and learn the best ways to do it. And then I would encourage also, especially for those of you that have some land where you can do this, I would encourage you to do a variety of styles. Maybe not so much a variety of plants. For instance, our garden this year, our big main garden, we're going to try to cut it down to only just a few different varieties so that we have a lot of harvest of those plants. But we're expanding more and more each year so that there's actually different types of garden plots around, so that you can kind of figure out which one works really well for you in your area. And so I would encourage that also. But today the video really is about foraging. And then what's great about this is I don't have to do anything. I don't have to come out here and water these. I don't have to come out here and prune them. I mean, you can, but you don't have to. They're native. They do fine on their own. I don't have to come out here and plant and fertilize them. I just have to come out here and harvest them when they're ready. And there's so many plants that's going to grow on your property that you're capable of doing that. There's walnuts and hickories and hazelnuts, and there's fruit trees, and there's fruiting vines, blackberries and raspberries and gooseberries and grapes. And then there's, of course, all kinds of edible greens. This out here, there's stuff all through here. It may look pretty good on the video, but it's not. This is where part of the field that I burned off over the winter, and then I've seeded it, trying to get some grass in here for the animals. But there's a lot of good plants that grow in here too, that you can eat and that are medicinal. You need to learn how to do this. Our ancestors did this. This was just a way of life for them. They knew how to go out and pick greens that were growing in their yard. They knew which trees produced nuts and fruits, and they knew which vines produced different fruiting berries and stuff, so that they could make pies and preserves and jams and stuff. This is a lost bit of art and knowledge that people in our generation, in our time, we've forgotten. And we need to rekindle that, bring that back, and find out what is out there that you can eat, that you could live off of. And here's another thing to think of. It's very healthy. Okay, Americans, it's no secret that most Americans are very depleted in a lot of certain nutrients, certain minerals, certain vitamins, because our diet is so processed. And if you have to resort to eating your preps, and maybe your preps is a lot of processed stuff or a lot of dry goods like beans and rice and pastas, and that's what you may have to live off of for a while. While that may keep you alive for calorie wise, there's not a lot of nutrition in a lot of that. And even like the freeze-dried foods and stuff, they're a little bit better, but they still don't hold their nutrition. Same way with the dehydrated foods. They still don't hold their nutrition as good as that same food that's fresh. And so when you learn how to eat out of the wild, the things that grow, this stuff out here that's growing wild, the nutritional level in it, the minerals, the vitamins, the medicines, things like that in these plants is way higher than even domestically grown vegetables. And so when you supplement your diet with this stuff that's growing wild, you're adding really a massive amount of nutrition into your diet. I often teach an herbalist class, and one of the things that I tell people is back in the Native Americans, and a lot of people look to Native Americans because of their medicinal herbal skills. And of all the research that I have done, one thing that I kind of found was that Native Americans and other native tribes across the planet, they didn't really use plants in a medicinal way like we do today. It wasn't like every time you got sick or you wasn't feeling good, you would, take some herb, drink some tea, or you take a tincture or something like that. Most of the plants that they were using in a medicinal form was either for spiritual purposes or it was for some type of injury. You broke a bone, you sliced a leg open, you got shot with an arrow, you got bit by an animal, and it was put on there to draw out toxins or poison or, infection or something like that. But they weren't usually giving medicinal herbs on a daily basis for just illnesses. And what I found through my research is there's not really any record of them having illnesses, at least not until, settlers from Europe came here and brought all their diseases over. And what the reason that they believe is for that is that they didn't need to take their medicines, eat these medicinal plants for medicines because they were eating them on a daily basis in their diet. So they were just naturally eating them all the time in big stews and soups and different things like that. And because of that, it was keeping their immune systems high enough that they rarely actually got sick. And we know this to be true because of the few primitive tribes that exist today, the ones that have very, very little contact with the Western world, with modern people. It's pretty much the same way. So the point that I'm getting at is these plants that grow wild, it's not just free food. It's not just food that you can depend on to kind of add those calories to your preps. This is the best way to really take in the natural medicines that you should be taking in to keep your immune levels up, to keep your overall health up. And I will assure you this, as things get worse and as the duty hits the fan even more, it's going to take a toll on our physical body. Stress does that. Just stress alone is going to take tolls on our physical body, and we need to have a pretty good focus on our personal health. And these plants that grow out here wild, they're an excellent, excellent way to do it. You incorporate them into your diet and you eat them on a regular basis. And so you're taking that medicine basically out of the plants in on a constant basis. And overall, it's going to improve your health. But folks, I want to encourage you seriously to get out and find the things that grow on your property. If you live in the city, you can do that there. You do have to have some concern with, chemicals that are put on the plants, pesticides and herbicides and stuff. But and I want you to encourage you to get out and figure out what grows and figure out what you can do with that. Is it medicinal? Is it herbal? Is it edible? Is it both? A lot of them are both. A lot of herbal plants, medicinal herbal plants, are also edible. Not all, but a lot of them. And start incorporating those into your diet. It's fun. And there's really no negative side to it. These bitter herbs that grow out here, they are so packed full of good medicines and nutritions. All right, folks, get out there and figure out what grows on your property that is edible. You will have a fun time doing it and really be surprised. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.